Today, we're going to be doing our first metagame roundup for Pokemon Pocket. While there's no ranked ladder in this game, the folks over at Limitless TCG have been running a bunch of tournaments that are open for the community to play in. There have been 2 tournaments that had around 500 players each register and battle it out in, and there were 3 others that had around 200 players each, meaning I've got a sample of over 1,500 Pokemon Pocket players duking it out in thousands of matches to work with data from today. Let's go ahead and dive out into the details and talk about what's working, what's not, and then speculate a little bit on the why. Let's kick things off with a broad strokes meta overview. Among our 1,561 competitors, about 24% of them registered Mewtwo EX, around 22% of them registered Pikachu EX, and around 10% of them registered Charizard EX decks. This leaves the other category, i.e. folks not playing one of these big 3 most popular decks, around 44% of the entrants. When it comes to broadly measuring the performance of these decks, rather than looking at specifically which decks came in exactly first in the single elimination rounds or even top 8 cuts, I think it's better to look at a more general strong performance metric. In my opinion, I think looking at deck lists that finished these tournaments with just 2 losses, i.e. they went 6-2 with a 75% win rate in the 8-round tournaments, or they went 7-2 with a bit above that in the 9-round tournaments, is a pretty reasonable measuring stick. Using this segmenting, we get a total of 149 deck lists out of our 1561 that finished with just 2 losses at the end of the tournament. If we then group our different decks inside of these strong finishers, we notice some very clear patterns. Pikachu EX decks represented almost 45% of these 149 top finishing decks, while Charizard EX represented about 11% of these 149 decks. Mewtwo EX represented around 21% of these top performing decks, and the other category represented only about 23% of these top finishing decks. Drawing a comparison between our starting distribution of deck lists and our top performers distribution, we see it very clear that Pikachu EX is the strongest performing decks in these breakout tournaments for Pokemon Pocket, taking its base 22% metagame share to begin with and over doubling that to 45% of the top performers. Charizard and Mewtwo remained relatively flat, with Charizard seeing a small increase, increasing its share from 10% to 11%, and Mewtwo decreasing from 24% down to about 21%. The other category, i.e. deck lists that are not one of these big 3, are the ones that had the biggest fall off, decreasing from 44% of the starting distribution to only about 23% of our top performers. As someone who's played a lot of card games and watched a lot of metagames grow and develop, it doesn't surprise me that this other category, which is largely unrefined decks in Pocket's early days here, is having the worst performance. People are still struggling to not only collect cards to build their decks fully, but also figure out exactly what they're attacking inside of this metagame. While I wouldn't be surprised if, as we look back in future weeks, that the other category still struggles, I would bet it probably won't underperform as badly as it has inside of this first metagame roundup. As we dig on into the details of what's going on in the matchups between these most popular decks, we see that Pikachu EX is absolutely dominating the competition. If we look specifically at Pikachu EX versus Charizard, in the matches that we have logged in our tournaments, Pikachu EX won 99 of them against Charizard, while only losing 44, or having an almost 70% win rate in the matchup. While it wasn't quite as advantaged over Mewtwo as it was Charizard, Pikachu EX beat Mewtwo EX 216 times while losing 166, or having an approximately 56.5% win rate over Mewtwo. Finally, looking at our head-to-head of Charizard versus Mewtwo, Charizard won 122 times in this matchup while losing just 81, or having an approximately 60% win rate over the Mewtwo deck. Looking forward to the future, I think for me personally, I'll no longer be saying it's unclear which deck is the best in Pokemon Pocket. For the time being, Pikachu EX has firmly cemented itself in my mind as being exactly that. Looking at the metrics, especially the head-to-heads of the decks against each other, I don't know that there's a clear standout for number 2 to me between Mewtwo and Charizard. While Mewtwo is a little bit of a dog against both Pikachu and Charizard, it doesn't have nearly as polarized of a matchup as Charizard does into Pikachu specifically. And if we expect Pikachu to get more popular as it is now the standout best deck, that would make choosing something like Charizard even more of a risk. Now, the big question in my mind is, can the metagame develop around Pikachu being the standout number 1? Are there tools such as fighting decks that can lean into Pikachu's weaknesses, or decks like Venusaur that can go bigger, that can stand up? For the rest of today's video, we are going to try and answer exactly that question by running through some of the most successful decks from that 22% other category of our top finishers that could maybe be our next breakout thing in Pokemon Pocket. We kick off these off-meta decks with some Alakazam Greninja, a deck list that I had featured previously on the channel here that I think is a very solid pick right now. Kangaskhan as a 100 hit point frontliner takes 2 full charged hits to go down against Pikachu EX, which gives you time to set up whichever of your stage 2 Pokemon is ideal. Greninja lets you start dealing out damage very quickly while also picking up knockouts that anything the opponent has retreated to their bench with Water Shuriken. And Alakazam is one of the heaviest non-EX hitters in Pokemon Pocket right now, with his damage scaling based on how many energy the opponent has. This means you can go toe-to-toe with things like Mewtwo EX, Charizard EX, and even Venusaur EX very solidly in the late game. Greninja was the only Alakazam deck to find success in tournaments, though, with Weezing Alakazam also putting up some results as well. Weezing is a phenomenal Stage 1 Pokemon in terms of both tankiness and the ability to deal damage. 110 means that even a Giovanni charged Pikachu EX takes 2 hits to get through you, and when we pair in the powerful supporter Koga, allowing us to reset Weezing back to our hand and redeploy it, it becomes a wall that's very difficult for your opponent to get to in an efficient amount of time, which means you can even set up a slower finisher like Alakazam against the more aggressive decks in the format. While Alakazam deals less damage, something like a Pikachu EX also has less HP, meaning that 120 is still lethal in a single hit. If you really want to metagame the big 3, I think this Weezing Arbok Dark deck is phenomenal into 2 of them. Against Mewtwo EX, we're all Dark types, so you get additional weakness damage, letting you clear their main attacker in just 2 rounds most of the time. And against Pikachu EX, Weezing and Arbok both have very healthy HP pools, meaning that often they're going to be trading 1 knockout point for 2 as you go toe-to-toe with their EX Pokemon with your non-EX. This particular list I'm highlighting here is electing to include a one of Grimer and Muck, which I personally have enjoyed when trying this archetype out. While Muck isn't necessary in those 2 popular matchups, i.e. Mewtwo and Pikachu, I found it's very good against things like Dragonite and Venusaur and other off-meta things where you need 1 big burst of damage that your smaller Arbok and Weezings just can't chip through on their own. If you're looking to be as aggressive as possible with single knockout point decks, look no further than Blaine. Rapidash has a healthy 100 hit point pool while cracking for 40 damage with just a single energy, and Ninetales is a fairly heavy hitter, dealing 90 for 2 that requires a constant energy investment. When we add our powerful supporter in Blaine on top, suddenly we're dealing 120 for 2, knocking out Pikachu EXs in a single blow. I really love the inclusion of a 5th or potentially 6 basic in this list, with a sample one including Farfetch. I think Kangaskhan's an excellent candidate for that slot as well, with Kangaskhan being a bit better into the Pikachu EX matchup because of its higher hit point total, while Farfetch is a bit better against things like Mewtwo and Charizard because it deals a little bit more consistently high damage. Up next, we have a Marowak EX Sandslash deck that I really like the look of. Most notably, Marowak EX and Sandslash both start hitting for an incredible amount of damage for just 2 energy, and they're both fighting types, meaning they have weakness advantage over most things in the Pikachu deck. I really like the inclusion of 2 copies of Hitmonlee as basics 5 and 6 in this deck list as well, because in my experience, the decks that have these aggressive early attackers can struggle a little bit into things like Charizard or Dragonite to look to get set up on the bench behind some defenses, and Hitmonlee lets you reach past whatever that Weezing or frontline thing your opponent has and start pressuring that Charmander or Dratini before it has a chance to evolve. This deck list is leaning into its aggressive slant extra with 2 copies of Giovanni, letting you push out even more damage than you otherwise would be in key spots. If you're a water enjoyer, Starmie EX when paired with Greninja is one of my personal favorite ways to play that energy typing in Pokemon Pocket right now. I absolutely love that this deck can leverage a Misty coin flip or 2 to start getting damage out quickly while not being entirely reliant on that card to play an honest game of Pokemon Pocket. Starmie EX's 130 HP is a stellar breakpoint in the current format because even a fully powered up Pikachu EX attack paired with a Giovanni will still take 2 turns to knock out this powerful EX Pokemon. When you pair that with the fact that Starmie EX has a free retreat cost with good gameplay shuffling your cards around the board, a skilled player can outmaneuver a lot of opponents. I love the inclusion of Kangaskhan as a 5th basic in this deck. I think you could even go so far as playing a 2nd copy as well to really hedge that Pikachu matchup and give you more chances to get Greninja set up in the games where you don't open on Starmie EX. Last but certainly not least, Venusaur EX is the tankiest pocket monster in Pokemon Pocket at launch, and this is the best deck if you're looking to drag out games as long as possible. Its 190 hit point pool, combined with its built-in 30 points of healing every round, makes it a true monster to deal with if you don't have something like Charizard EX to blow it away in one hit. This deck list frontline in Exeggutor EX is no slouch either. That starting 160 hit point pool when paired with Erica means that even a fully powered up Pikachu EX is going to take 3 turns to cut through your frontline, giving you plenty of time to set Venusaur up. It's noteworthy that this deck list is playing 2 copies of X speed because any game where you start on a Bulbasaur, you're going to want to switch that out for your Exeggutor ASAP as Venusaur evolves safely on your bench for the late game. Thanks for making it through to the end of the video. If you're not familiar with me, welcome. My name is Jeff Hoagland. In addition to playing card games competitively for decades and making content here on the internet as my full-time job for almost the last decade now, I also have a graduate degree and an undergraduate degree in mathematics. I've spent time doing data analysis for a Fortune 50 company in a former life, diving into all of the nitty-gritty statistics and details surrounding metagames is definitely my cup of tea, and I absolutely love making videos like this. If you enjoy watching them, be sure to snap that like button and share the video with other Pokemon Pocket fan that you think might enjoy it. I would love to have roundups like this be a mainstay here on my channel if the metrics support doing that. Shout out to LimitlessTCG.com as well. I've played in a few of their tournaments as well, and I really enjoy getting that competitive aspect of Pokemon Pocket. The best of 3 is a very different setting and feeling than just playing random games in the queue in a way that is a ton of fun. You should check them out. I'll link their website in the video description down below so you can see which community tournaments are coming up. There's been a lot of them being run, handful during the week, but a lot on Friday, Saturday, Sunday as well. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel also. In addition to breakdowns like this one and other guides, there's lots of deck highlights of off-meta things that I've been working on trying to find what that next breakout deck could be, and I'd love if you come back again sometime and check it out.